Last Saturday, I attended a traditional wedding ceremony. There were many people. We ate food, we danced.
You know exactly what happened, but why doesn't your essay sound like a story? Let's investigate. Our essay reads: Last Saturday, I attended a traditional ceremony. There were many people. We ate food. We danced. The events are there, but something important is missing. So, what exactly makes something a narrative? Let's not start with a definition. Let's ask a few questions. Who was there? A story needs people, characters who experience the events. Where did it happen? A village, a school, a busy market, somewhere far from home. When? When did it happen? Yesterday? Last Saturday? One unforgettable evening. What happened? Now we're getting somewhere. Events must unfold in a sequence. First this happened, then this, and then something else. What changed? And this is where your story becomes more than a list of events. Something happens, something develops, and by the end, something is different. That's a narrative. But knowing the ingredients isn't enough. Let's see what happens when we actually step inside the story. Remember this sentence. Last Saturday, I attended a traditional ceremony. At the moment, it's just a sentence, but a good narrative doesn't leave the reader standing outside the story. It invites them in. So let's go in. It's Saturday morning. The sun hangs low over the village, casting a warm golden light across the homesteads. Children race between the adults, their laughter mixing with the distant beat of drums. Women prepare food while guests arrive from different directions. The air is filled with movement, music, and anticipation. And somewhere in the middle of it all, our story begins. Now, that is a story worth telling. But wait, how do we make sure this is actually a story and not just a list of things that happened? A strong narrative needs more than characters and events. Think of your story like a journey. First, we need someone to follow, character. Then, we need somewhere and some time for the story to happen, setting. Next, things begin to happen, events. But here is the important question: what goes wrong? Problem. Something should disturb the ordinary flow of events. Then comes the moment when everything changes, the turning point. Finally, the problem is dealt with, resolution, and the story reaches its ending. But don't try to memorize that list. Instead, ask yourself 6 questions before you start writing. Who is my story about? Where and when does it happen? What happens? What goes wrong? What changes everything? And how does it end? If you can answer those questions, you already have the bones of your story. Now, let's test our story. We have character, setting, events. But something is missing. We need to have a problem because without a challenge, a turning point, or something that changes, Your narrative can become nothing more than a list of events. So, let's give this story a problem. And that is where our real story begins.
There were many people.
Is this a story or just information? Look at this sentence. There were many people. It's correct, but does it help you see the scene? Can you imagine what the people were doing? A good narrative doesn't simply tell us that people were there. It shows us what they were doing, what they looked like, and what was happening around them. So, let's now take time to fix our essay. Our original sentence says, there were many people. It's grammatically correct, but there is a problem. It tells us that people were there, but it doesn't help us experience the moment. So, instead of simply telling the reader, let's show them. The village square was crowded with people, their colorful clothes filling the open space as they gathered for the celebration. Now, we can see the crowd, we can imagine the colors, we can feel that something is happening. That's the difference between simply reporting an event and turning it into a story. We can show our summary of show and not tell through the following. We have a fact, which was there were many people. We have details. Who were they? What were they doing? What did they look like? And then we have an image. The village square was crowded with people. Now, look carefully at what we've done. We've taken a simple statement and added details. But why do those details make the writing stronger? First, we give the reader a place, the village square. Then, we give the reader something to see, colorful clothes filling the open space. And if we add sound, the reader doesn't just see the celebration, they can almost hear it. Ask yourself, what can my character see? What can they hear? What can they smell? And what can they feel? Also note, you don't need all 5 every time. Choose the details that help your reader experience the moment. Notice something important. We haven't changed what happened. We've simply given the reader more to experience. And that's the secret ingredient. But a narrative needs more than description. We've brought the scene to life, but a story can't simply stay here. Something has to happen. Something has to change. Remember, a story has to move. Our celebration is going perfectly. People are dancing. The drums are playing. Everyone is enjoying themselves. And then something goes wrong. This is the problem. The moment when something interrupts the normal flow of the story. And remember, your problem doesn't have to be dramatic. It could be a misunderstanding, an unexpected event, a difficult decision, or a conflict. What matters is that it gives your character something to deal with. But the problem is only the beginning. A strong narrative builds towards a moment when something important happens, a moment that changes the direction of the story. This is a turning point. The missing necklace changes everything. Think of it this way. The problem creates the question, what are we going to do? The turning point is the moment when the answer or the path towards it begins to appear. Finally, the problem needs an ending. The characters find the characters find a way forward. The tension is resolved and the story moves towards its conclusion. This is a resolution. Then notice the journey. Problem, something goes wrong. Turning point, something changes the direction of the story. Resolution, the problem is dealt with. Here's a simple trick you can use before you start writing. Don't begin by writing the whole essay. First, answer 3 questions. What goes wrong? What changes everything? And how it will end. If you know those 3 things, your story already has direction. Now, we've discovered the story, we've given it a problem, we've created a turning point, and we've resolved it. Now it's time to turn that story into an essay. Before you start writing paragraph after paragraph, pause. Let's turn our story into a plan. Our story already has the ingredients we need. Now we organize those ingredients into paragraphs. The beginning of the story becomes our introduction. The events, problem, and turning point become the development of our story. And the resolution gives us a meaningful ending. Our introduction doesn't need to tell the whole story. Its job is to take the reader into the situation. Where are we? When is this happening? What makes the reader want to continue? Next, we develop the story. We don't throw every event into one giant paragraph. We organize related events so that one moment leads naturally to the other. You can pause the video to see how we moved from the arrival to the turning point. And finally, we bring the story to a close. Don't simply stop writing because you've reached the last event. Give the reader a sense of completion. What happened? What changed? What did the experience mean? And this is the transformation. We started with an idea. We built a story. We planned the events. And now we've organized those events into an essay. That's how you move from story to essay. So, when you're given a narrative topic in an exam, don't stare at the blank page waiting for inspiration. Plan the journey first. Who, where, what happens, what goes wrong, what changes, and how does it end? Once you know the journey, writing becomes much easier. Let's see how our introduction looks like. You can pause the video to have a minute to look at it. Remember, a narrative isn't just a list of things that happened. Take your reader with you. We've learned how to take our reader through a story. But what if, instead of taking your reader through the story, you could make them stop, look, listen, and feel?